We're going to start Chapter 5, which looks at rates and ratios. So when would I ever use that? Well, what if I want to get a cup of coffee? So I want to see what the best deal is for a cup of coffee. Should I get a tall, a grande, or a venti? If I want to get the best deal, how could I figure that out? Well, that's what this chapter will teach us. So please go ahead and write down Chapter 5, Rates and Ratios. You do not need to write down what is the best deal, a cup of coffee. That's just an example of how you could use rates and ratios. So remember, as you go, if I go too fast, you can pause the recording. Along the way, I'll ask you to solve some problems. You can write your answers in your notebook, as well as enter your final answer into the text box that you see on the right side of your screen when you get to those questions. If you have other questions, please write them down on the side of your notebook so we can go over those tomorrow during class. So we're going to write this down. We're going to start with 5.1, which looks at ratios, and a ratio compares two quantities. And they can be written A colon B, A over B, so you can also write that as A over B, or A to B. So those are the three ways we can write a ratio. So again, when would I use this? Well, let's say you're going to bake some cookies. So you've decided to make chocolate chip cookies for the math club. The recipe calls for 3/4 cups of sugar, but the recipe only makes 20 cookies, and you need to make 60 cookies. So you have a ratio, you only have a recipe for 20 cookies, but you need to make 60 cookies. So that's how I can write the ratio. So then I could figure out how much sugar I would need. I need 3 times the amount of sugar to make those 60 cookies. So if I take 3/4 and I multiply that times 3, I get 9/4, which is an improper fraction. So let's make that into a mixed number. 4 goes into 9 twice, and I have 1/4. So I would need 2 1/4 cups of sugar to make that many cookies. So I was wondering, what is the difference between writing a ratio and a fraction? Well, a ratio compares two quantities. So for example, you're going to write this down. So write down ratio versus fraction. A ratio compares two quantities. So for example, for pets, 1 cat to every 4 dogs. 1 over 5, 1 out of 5 pets is a cat. 1 over 4, favorite pet. 1 out of 4 people, their favorite pet is a cat. Versus a fraction, write that down, which is a part of a whole. Can you really have 1/5 of a cat? You can have 1/5 of a cup of sugar, but not 1/5 of a cat. So ratios really compare entire quantities, and fractions are part of a whole. So again, write that down. When you're ready to move on, unpause your video. Okay, so you do not write this down. This just shows you another way to show ratios versus fractions. Okay, so here I have 2 cups out of 3 total cups. But here I have 2/3 of a cup. So that's one quantity. So again, it's just showing you the difference between ratios and fractions. This is 2 out of 3 whole parts, and this is 2 out of 3, or 2/3 of one part. Not sure if that helps, but it's another visual way to see the difference between ratios and fractions. All right, so we're going to practice writing our ratios first. So go ahead, write this in your notebook. Here's your example. Example 1, we're going to write some ratios. So I want to look at the ratio of red to green M&Ms. So I'm going to have to count the number of red M&Ms. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I have 6 red M&Ms, and how many green M&Ms do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I think I have 13. So remember, I can write the ratio 6 colon 13. I can write it as 6 over 13, or I can write it as 6 to 13. All right. What is the ratio of yellow to blue M&Ms? So now we're going to have to count the yellow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 yellow. And how many blue? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh, I think it's 12. Okay, what is the ratio of orange to the total number of M&Ms? Oh, great. Orange. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think it says 11. And how many total M&Ms do I have? Well, let's count those. Okay, so I'm not sure if I really need to count them or if I can add them up, because I counted my red, which was 6, my green, which is 13, so I'm going to say that's 19, plus my yellow is 25, plus my blue makes 37, plus my orange, I believe that would be 48 M&Ms. So I can write my ratios in this way. Okay, so this is where you're going to do some on your own. So write this in your notebook on your own. Number 1, A, what is the ratio of pennies to total change? So you're not counting up the amount of money that you have, but how many pennies do you have compared to how many other coins do you have? And then what is the ratio of quarters to dimes? So make sure you give me your final answer written in the correct form in the text box on the right. When you're ready to move on, go on to the next slide. Here's another one for you to do on your own. So favorite ice cream toppings are given. All right, so you're just going to write down on your own. Number 2, you don't need to write down or draw the picture. Just give me an answer. So compare the number of students who like hot fudge to the total number of students and write that as a ratio. So if you notice inside the box, these little numbers are how many. So that's a 1. How many people like those? So you don't need to look at the percentages, but the total number of students. So you want to compare hot fudge to the total number of students. Okay? So try that. Make sure you include the hot fudge students because they are part of the total. When you're ready to move on, enter that answer into the text box and move on. Okay, so we have another way to look at ratios. So here's an example. You have 72 total M&Ms, and you're going to put those into 2 groups. One for you and the other for a friend. So you keep 3 M&Ms for every 5 M&Ms you give your friend. So how many M&Ms do you get out of the total? So that's kind of your ratio, your 3 to 5. So I'm going to draw some bars. So here you have you, and here you have your friend. Again, you're going to write this down. Please even copy down the example question so that you have it as a reference. So you said you keep 5 M&Ms for every 3 you give to your friend. So we're going to draw 5 boxes. So that represents the 5 M&Ms that you're keeping. So your friend is going to keep the ratio of 3. So here's your ratio, 5 to 3. So if we have total, how many total parts do we have? We have 8 total parts. Well, how many M&Ms do you have? You have 72 total M&Ms. And you want to break that up into 8 parts. So what is 72 divided by 8? That's 9. So that means that every one of these will have 9 M&Ms in it. Okay, so how many M&Ms did you actually get? So you have 9 times 5, which is 45 M&Ms, and your friend has 9 times 3. Sorry about that, 9 times 3. So they have 27 M&Ms. Let's double check to make sure that works. So what is 45 plus 27? Okay, so that's 12. So 72, so that works. So you can also draw these bar diagrams to show the ratios. Okay, so you're going to try one on your own. You receive an allowance each month for each $2 that you make. For each $2 made, you must put $3 in the bank. Oh, that doesn't make any sense. For each $2 you make, you must put $3 in the bank. Last month you made $75. Oh, so it's a ratio. So you're going to draw your boxes. So let's say you can, let's call this spending money and bank money. So you can spend $2 forever, and you have to put $3 in the bank. So you can set that up as your box ratio. How many total parts do you have? And then out of the 75 total dollars, how much are you going to put in the bank, and how much do you get to keep for spending? So go ahead and try that, and if you don't get it, that's okay. We can work on it tomorrow during class. Okay, just as a reminder, a ratio compares two quantities, and a fraction is part of a whole. And remember, there's different ways to write a ratio. You can write it as 2/3. You can write it 2/3, and you can actually write it as 2/3. You can also draw your box diagrams. So you can draw 2 boxes to 3 boxes to show your ratios, which is different than your fraction. Your fraction is just part of a whole. We will see you tomorrow during class.